In our first chapter, we will be covering the ins and outs of project management in the design industry. Being a successful designer is not just about being able to use the tools well. It's also about understanding your audience and knowing how to translate your message or goal into a design. By the end of this chapter, you'll learn how to 1. Identify purpose, audience, and audience needs, 2. Demonstrate knowledge of basic project management, and 3. Communicate design plans and projects. Let's get started. First, what is project management? Well, project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to achieve specific goals and meet project success. Whether you're trying to become a professional freelancer or working on a design project for a class assignment, it's vital that you understand project management and how to best communicate the design process. These are vital soft skills that will help you be professional, concise, and organized. In project management, there are 5 key phases. Phase 1, planning and analysis. Phase 2, designing. Phase 3, building. Phase 4, testing. And lastly, Phase 5, implementing. We'll go through each phase and discuss their goals. First, let's talk about Phase 1, planning and analysis. In this phase, the goal is to plan, research, and meet with your team or client to start the project. The better planning you do, the smoother the project will go. The key components are research, a kickoff meeting, target audience, purpose, and using effective communication tools. Research is a vital component to feeling prepared and creating a professional environment. Research includes looking at your client's website, reading their mission statement, and reviewing their existing marketing and design materials. Depending on the type of design work, you might also want to review their competitors' materials and content. Research will help you make recommendations and establish scope and client expectations. Following your research, many projects start with a kickoff meeting to discuss and determine the project's purpose, requirements, scope, target audience, and timeline. Likely, your client will have a clear idea of the project purpose, but make sure you establish expectations, scope, and deliverables initially. For instance, if your client is asking you to create print materials, ask them to be more specific. Do they want you to create billboards, bench ads, or posters? All of the above? When a project is not properly defined, documented, or controlled, this can lead to miscommunication and scope creep. What is scope creep? Well, scope creep is when there are changes to a project scope after it begins. Let's say if a client says they'd like to add something else to the project later on, such as creating a magazine ad. You can say, well, we need to reevaluate our project plan to adjust, and it will potentially affect our timeline and costs. Ultimately, this helps avoid confusion and upset clients. Once you've outlined the purpose, you'll want to discuss target audience. Consider factors such as age, occupation, gender, education, and location. Your client will probably have a clear understanding of their audience, but this is where your research might come in handy to help guide the conversation. The target audience will affect design choices such as color, language, and types of images. For example, consider how you might design differently for an older audience versus a younger audience. After identifying the purpose and your audience, all of this will be communicated in a project plan that includes a schedule and, if possible, deadlines for key deliverables. The plan will then be approved by your client and team. Throughout the process, keep in mind the following. Punctuality, communication, and professionalism are key. You'll need to hold meetings to keep your client and team on the same page. A well-thought-out planning and analysis phase will set you up for a successful project. In Phase 2, designing, this is the initial storyboarding and first iterations of the design project. Designers often create sketches, wireframes, design compositions, and flowcharts. Depending on the deliverable, not all of them may be applicable in your process. Like sketching is good practice before working digitally, wireframes and flowcharts are important if you are designing for the web or for a screen. Compositions can be used to start thinking about layout and hierarchy with graphic design projects. Think about what's the best tool to represent the initial idea with. There are a lot of tools out there, including Photoshop. Here's an example of a wireframe and design composition we created for the homepage of the annenbergdl.org site. You'll notice we first created a wireframe pictured on the left, and then once we had made some design choices, we created a design composition pictured on the right. Elements established in this phase can include color, font, layout, and navigation choices. As you create preliminary sketches, wireframes, and compositions, engage your client and team. Get feedback before you move on to phase 3 of building. Again, client communication and feedback is important. It's good practice to create a feedback loop and set up periodic meetings for your client or team to make sure you are still on the same page. In phase 3, building, this is where the fun starts. You'll start using your photo editing and graphic design skills. Based on your final wireframes and compositions, you'll start building the product or a prototype if there will be future iterations of the same concept. A prototype is a preliminary model of something from which other forms are developed or copied. When you've reached a final build, you'll move into phase 4, testing. This can take many forms depending on the final product. If it's a website, you might have users go through a prototype of the website and have them give feedback on the flow and usability. If you're working on a graphic, you might want to test 2 different styles of images to see which one works better. This is an opportunity to see if your target audience is responding well to your design or prototype. The final and last phase is phase 5, implementation, where your final design is printed or published, depending on the format. This is the final delivery and launch. You successfully completed all 5 phases. Even if you aren't a professional project manager, following these phases will certainly make you look like one and make your clients or your team happy. Join us in our next chapter where we'll be discussing copyright, permissions, and licensing when it comes to using images.